Good morning, world. This is Steve Rao. Sorry, folks. Good morning, world. This is Steve Rao on Pod TV, World Edition, the new brand and name of our station. And on Pod TV, World Edition, we bring you news from around the world, talk about innovation, and continue our discussion of what we can do to develop and grow and build back stronger from this pandemic, COVID 19. Today, I want to first of all thank you all for a week off. We got to rest and rebound and enjoy some of the great spring weather here in the United States of America, and we hope wherever you are in the world that you are safe. Today, I want to take a few minutes and talk about India, which is continuing to go through COVID hell, and we pray for Ankit Khandelwal and his family in India. Last night in North Carolina, I was a speaker at a vigil for India in Cary, North Carolina, in their downtown park. And it's easy to understand the statistics that I'm hearing from every day. 4,000 people a day dying in India today, about 150 an hour. Millions and millions of new cases. In fact, just last week, in one day, there was reported 4 million cases. Now, we know why this has happened. Plain and simple, India took it for granted. They eased up after a very massive draconian lockdown where people could not even leave the streets or their homes, and they were locked down completely. And then they went full circle to allowing the Kumbh Mela, the Hindu festival where 10 million gather, and inaugurating the Narendra Modi cricket stadium, where over 10,000 people, citizens of India, were watching cricket matches. All of this happening as hospital systems are cracked down, crematoriums are booked out, and I'm getting phone calls in Morrisville from uncles, daughters, sons, brothers who are so sad they cannot go see their loved ones in their time of need and may even have to bury their loved ones without a funeral service. Now, I want to close out by talking about the human story and taking it one step further. And we're going to talk about what the United States is doing and continue to do to help India. And I want to share some thoughts with you today about that. But yesterday we heard from Anuja Purohit, one of my friends here who lost an uncle. My 92-year-old uncle had COVID and is living with folks with COVID-19. He has congestive heart failure, so he wasn't able to take the vaccine. And just a few days ago, I listened to Fareed Zakaria's eulogy of his mother, Fatima Zakaria, a famous, renowned journalist. He gave a very moving eulogy, which brought me to tears live on his CNN show, Fareed Zakaria, GPS, Global Public Square. He talked about the influence his mother had on him. But what was most compelling to me, and we've talked about immigration, is he talked about the sadness and distance of immigration. That in this pandemic, I'm seeing it on the ground in Morrisville. We often look at immigration as the positive economic benefits that our country can gain from many of the Indian American community who have built the technology infrastructure of our country, of our state. If you're at IBM, SAS, Lenovo, any of the major companies like Infosys or HCL, you also see these contributions in healthcare and medicine. And at the end of the day, what we are seeing is that this nation is completely gridlocked. But the distance is what Zakaria focused on, the sadness of immigration, the fact that he could not bury his own mother, that he could not thank her in person for the influence that she had in her life. This is the sadness and distance that I'm seeing every day in Morrisville and Cary, and I'm sorry to get emotional, but it really is telling that this pandemic is a human catastrophe. No child should have to not be able to say bye to their mother who is dying. No child should be able to not be able to at least go in person and pay respects to her mother or any loved one that we have lost. On closing, what we can do to help. You can go to charity organizations like International Seva International. You can go to bapscharities.org, the Desai Foundation, American Red Cross. All of these organizations are deploying resources, medical personnel, personal protective equipment, and of course, President Biden's plans of $100 million additional funds to help India. My final call is to the technology community. This is a time for our tech leaders and our pharmaceutical companies and our innovation companies in America to give back to India because she's made America strong, and now we need to make India strong. Sorry for going over my time and a little bit of emotion, but I'm here with Sasha Starr. Thank you very much.
Hello, good morning, everybody.
I think Mark Lee will be joining again. I'm sorry I got a little emotional there, but I'm seeing a lot of death and destruction in my own backyard. It's been quite hard for me to see. So not really see, but to hear the horror stories, right? So
Yeah, it's it's a tragic story. It's very difficult to actually to find a way out because the financial help has its limits. For example, in India, the problem is not even like oxygen that so many people need, but the balloons which carry this oxygen. There is a huge shortage of that. There is a huge shortage of doctors, nurses. How you can challenge that? You can throw billions of dollars in that, and it's not going to solve it. That's the biggest problem, and I don't see a lot of volunteers from all over the world who would go there to fill this vacancies of doctors and nurses. I don't think it will happen because all these professional people need it in their own countries just as well. So it's a human tragedy, and I'm not overly optimistic on that. And also from what I've learned from history of India, it's not even one nation that follow its leader or leaders or so on. It's a conglomerate of different nations who have its own traditions, its own even religious beliefs, culture, and each one has its own leaders, and I don't know to which degree they are following their leaders. So this is why it's, for example, in China, everybody knows who is the leader. Everybody knows that you follow that leader or you'll be shot. Okay, simple. Maybe not very fair, but at least simple. Everybody understands how it works. In India, the central government is absolutely inadequate and
yeah,
it's
we're gonna talk about this.
horrible.
I didn't get to. Yeah, no, that's exactly. And I forgot. I wanted my monologue today to be a little bit more about the human side, but I might close out talking about what we can learn from this experience. As I think that's a great conversation to have, right, Sasha? And we're waiting for Mark Lee to come back. I think one thing that is important to understand is that the lockdown clearly didn't work when Modi did the lockdown initially, where in India, you have very dense cities. You have some people, 10, 11 people living in a house. You have migrant workers, and they were hurt economically by not being able to work, starving, not even being able to get food. So there's no way they can go back to another lockdown. But only 2% of the nation as of last week was vaccinated. So the question becomes, how do you get that vaccination, the shots in arms, right? How do you get the testing out there, right? It's very, very hard, right? I don't know. I don't know whether it's going to be more forces coming there, like a military logistics campaign where the U.S. is working with the allies to get it. I'm sure the stories that I said about what's going here in Morrisville are going on all over Canada too. I mean, let's not forget we have a huge Indian community there, a huge
Yes,
Indian
that's right.
community in Britain, a huge community all over the world, right? So this pandemic is affecting our hearts and our mindset, but also the economy, which I find to be interesting because right now the stock market in India continues to go up. So the economists think that India will survive this, and they
It
have to.
might as well be, yeah. The only problem is what I can see here in Toronto is that the basically everybody is getting vaccinated. It's very, very well organized and thought out procedures. I was vaccinated actually last week. It's organized on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 and a half. That's what I would give it. Unfortunately, the level of people getting infected in Toronto area is still relatively high. And the only one reason for that, it's unfortunately Brampton area, or so-called Peel County in Toronto, which is populated mostly by immigrants from India. I don't have anything in particular to say against the immigrants from India at all. What I'm saying is that this is a peculiar, um, probably sort of um, trait of the people who, first of all, they always like to be in communes. They always like to be together of 10, 20, 50 people, 100 even better. They love gatherings of all kinds: family gathering, friends gatherings, political gatherings, non-political gatherings. They want to be together. And this is in this COVID situation, nothing worse could be than that. So Canada stopped flights recently, 2 weeks ago probably, from India to Toronto. Okay, so the level of infection started to go down considerably. However, something new happened. So Indians started to go to Toronto area through Frankfurt. So they're boarding flights through in New Delhi, flying to Frankfurt, Frankfurt, Toronto. So now they sort of put a lead on that by requiring everybody arriving go to 2 weeks quarantine, staying in the hotel at their own expense, which is anywhere from $2,000 and up. So that kind of sobers people a little bit. Not a great deal, but this is basically what you're dealing. It's nothing mysterious about this. The gatherings of people. This is the worst thing in COVID that could be done, and this particularly Indian people, unfortunately, very fond of. It's their nature. It's customs. It's a history. It's just anything. You can't blame even that for them because this is a part of their culture and upbringing. What can you do about it? Very little,
Well,
unfortunately.
I think there's one strategy, and I'm going to ping Mark Lee in a minute to find where he is. But one strategy is to really have a strategy that's reaching out to the tech companies in United States, Canada, that have really benefited from the Indian community coming here through the immigration policies we've had, right? And really reaching out to these companies. I mean, when I talked about personal protective equipment, one example is oxygen generators. So the biggest dilemma going right now I'm hearing is that oxygen generators are about $700 per generator, right? They can't get them on the ambulances to the rural areas and the rural villages. So people are getting the COVID infection, no oxygen, they're dying within 10 days to a week, sometimes more, sometimes less. So, contributions and money that's getting those generators out there is really, really important, right? But the technology community, if I could take IBM and SAS and Cisco and Lenovo and Oracle and Microsoft, and then also the pharmaceutical companies as well, and each one of them buy X amount of generators, we could be helping India save lives, right? Because what I'm seeing is a lot of the temples and local organizations are raising money, but I want to see some 10, 20, 30, 50, $100,000 checks come in, which I think could help, accelerate it, right? What are your thoughts about that?
As I said before, I don't believe that the money is a solution at all. Because, by the way, I saw it on CNN last week. They showed the documentary about exactly what's happening in India. And one of these commentators, she was right there, right in India. And what you see is a huge place with about 100 people sick, maybe a lot of them terminally sick. And on 100 people, they showed they had five doctors and nurses together. So I'm not sure two doctors and three nurses or one doctor and four nurses. I don't remember the proportion, but this no amount of billions of dollars will cure this huge problem that there are just not enough professionals. Another thing is nothing will help until Indian people themselves will understand what's causing COVID, and the public gathering should be completely ruled out. If needed, just to do substantial punishments for doing exactly that. You have to wear masks. You have to keep the same thing. What eventually helped the rest of the world? How did Taiwan or New Zealand or other countries dealt with it? This is exactly, the recipe is well known. So why do you think that Indian people are exceptional and they can gather 100 people at a time or so and then get sick, and then they want pharmaceutical companies and IBMs and others to help? It would be wonderful if they will provide some help, and hopefully they will. But this is not the most important thing. What will help Indian people? It's they themselves must first of all to help themselves.
Yeah, well, that's a great way to segue. And I'm going to try to find out where Mark Lee went. He jumped off, but it might be the Wi-Fi. But that's a really great thing to talk about today. And I think it's something, Sasha, that we're not talking about. How did India get to this place, right? I think what is clearly shown is a very inefficient government. The corruption in India, the it's always been a problem, and but India has made it and thrived because of the economic growth and potential, a growing middle class of 365, 70 million plus, maybe closing in on 400 million, a whole new generation of Indians under 35 years of age or even under 25, 70, 65 to 70% of the nation. And so this has created some energy where they're creating companies, they're growing and expanding their economy. They've had relatively open markets uh, before even Modi under Manmohan Singh. And now all of a sudden, but the problem is, you know, the government just wasn't able to deal with a crisis like this. Something as basic as healthcare systems, hospitals, supplies, right? Being able to orderly do this. And I'm hearing stories of people going into Indian hospitals and getting double or triple charged for oxygen generators or supplies because of the kickbacks. This is a terrible thing. And so don't you think that's something that well, you're in Canada and you're from Russia, but I think President Biden, if there's anything about America's rebound during COVID, is that government can work if it works in the right ways and deploys the funding, right? Now, the advantage we have is that we can print, not really print, but we can put $1,400 checks in American hands. We can put um, $58 billion into our restaurants. We can do $2 trillion of infrastructure, but countries like India can't do that. So, don't you think that's a point about the efficiency of government, effectiveness of government?
Mm, well, see, with the population that of India, I think effectiveness of government is the last thing what you should worry about. I mean, with the size of population of well over billion 300 billion 300 million people or so, probably more than that. What government? Let's see if Modi would be the brightest person in the world, and what could he do to affect of what's happening right now in India? Very little, probably nothing. I think this is a responsibility of Indian people. You just can't find somebody else who is a government or pharmaceutical companies or high tech companies or Biden or Putin or just anybody else. Please don't do that because it's not right and it's unproductive and it doesn't work at the end of the day. It's the Indian people who can help themselves. That's the only thing what can somehow save still a lot of people. But a lot of people are doomed because everything whatever will be happening right now and it do substantial changes and improvements, but a lot of people are doomed and a lot of people still will die. But it's possible, in my opinion, to save the millions of people from dying if right now everybody will take responsibilities in his or her hands.
Sorry, had to reconnect my Wi-Fi network. It happens. Um, I just emailed Mark Lee about I don't know something must have happened, but it's just gonna be you and me today. Um, so I think the efficiency of government is important. Addressing corruption and making sure that in the future India is ready to deal with something like this. And so I guess now the next steps is just waiting it out, making sure that they can get more vaccine supplies and more vaccine manufactured, making sure that we can perhaps have something in place about fines or um, more stricter enforcement of just going in these mass gatherings without masks, which is rampantly spreading the infection.
I would
And
recommend as a punishment, forget about fines. In situation like this one in India, it should be a corporal punishment and in some cases death penalties. I don't believe in fines. Fines don't deter people from doing whatever they want to do. Okay, so some people will say, okay, so I'll pay fine. That's okay. But corporal punishment, a death penalty? Oh yeah, yeah, that will stop a lot of people for breaking the laws. And right now, situation is critical because more and more, not only people that is out of this 100 people with five doctors and nurses. Of course, you could see probably 90% of these people will die. Okay, so there will be other 100 people. Again, 90% of those people will die. No vaccine will help them already. It's too late now for a vaccine. So it's trying to at least save people who are not affected yet by coronavirus, so they don't have it yet. So they have to really, really do everything possible to try to save themselves.
yeah, I mean it's well, we pray for India. We're going to talk about it at the end. I'll be leaving some names of organizations that you all can contribute to or promote in your networks. I'll be reaching out to the tech community this week in North Carolina and around the country. With that being said, very dismal jobs report. President Biden will be addressing the nation today around 2 o'clock this afternoon. 260,000 new jobs. The economists were projecting a million, um, and unemployment increased by 1%. What's going on in America? Why is jobs not coming as fast as we thought?
I don't think that the jobs will come not fast enough or not even slow enough. I mean, it's a post-pandemic world is being created right now, and a lot of jobs which were lost, a lot of them, most of them, I would say, will not return. So a lot of people who were let go they long time ago they should have started something else. Maybe they didn't hurry up because they got the government subsidies, $1,400 checks or so on. But that will last not that long. So eventually they will have to do something about it, and they will not get their jobs back. That's 100%. So they will try to re-educate themselves, improve themselves, learn something new, becoming entrepreneurs. What else they can do? There is very little they can do actually.
Yeah, I mean it's here. Mark is bumped in. Mark Lee, welcome to Pot
Sorry
TV.
about that.
No, it's okay. I'm
Oh,
having
Hey, it's Pod TV. It's the Pod TV family. Good to see y'all here. Sorry about ducking out and in, but I said I was just putting it in our cat at everything. I actually had a potential guest that was, the great thing about guests is that sometimes, as you know, Sasha, and as you know, Steve, they can sometimes be shy. So I've had a potential guest for my radio podcast, or my audio podcast, I should say, that I do on Blog Talk Radio. So it's an author, and he's a gentleman, probably in his 60s or 70s, but definitely loves being an author, but also is shy about the publicity part. So I had to do a little nursemaiding, but you know how that is sometimes. Sometimes you got to get them comfortable with the whole concept of being interviewed. So that's what I was doing, was a little bit of that kind of things that you have to do. I know Sasha's done that with a couple of his chess folks, let them know that they can be comfortable in doing the show and all of that, because sometimes folks just get a little bit overwhelmed by this whole media thing.
Well, this is just delightful. I mean, first of all, when we have Nick Paladiva, we're gonna talk about India towards the end. We just had a robust conversation about what I'm seeing on the ground here. Sorry for getting emotional, but I'm seeing so much death right here in Morrisville and Cary for people with
Mm.
family in India, and the distance and sadness of immigration in terms of someone not being able to say goodbye to their mother or not even bury their mother is shocking. But let's focus on the jobs report right now. So we'll start with you, Nick Paudiva. 260,000, pretty dismal. And President's addressing the nation this afternoon. What's going on? Why would we so off from the forecast? The economists were saying a million jobs, and it's 260,000.
Yeah, that's a bit of a problem, I would say. Part of it might be because of the unemployment benefits are so high. In other words, the thing is that there's no incentive to go back to work if you're being paid not to. A little bit of a issue. So, so that's the issue. In other words, and the thing is, the government's going to have to address it at some point in time.
Yeah, Mark, what are you seeing out there where you are in Durham? Jobs, more
I
people
mean,
out of
definitely,
work.
folks. What Nick just said, there's some people that are concerned about the unemployment benefits, the stimulus packages, and things along those lines. So I can definitely understand where those figures would be there, as people are, as Nick just said, staying in the house and all of that while they're collecting their money and trying to survive. But a lot of that is also was what I called survival money. So definitely, I don't know that I would necessarily totally agree with what Nick just said, because definitely some of that money that was being put into people's hands was for being able to pay your rent, even though some of the rents were waived and things along those lines during the height of the pandemic. And a lot of folks are still getting through that and everything. And then, of course, there was a number of jobs that have gone what I call that hybrid mix. So it's kind of part of the job is at the home and part of the job is out on the office place. So some of those figures, I'm not 100% sure that they are accurate, because I know quite a few people that are working from their homes, and I don't know that they're necessarily being reported all the ways that you can report the job. So I think that there are also some jobs that out there that are being missed. So I think that there might be some undercounting as well, because a lot of people are doing hybrid jobs. We all know at least one individual in our family who is working one of those gig jobs, and those are definitely hardly not counted at all. So we've got people that are working things like Lyft and Uber, and definitely Grubhub, and a number of other kind of gig jobs that are out there as well. So those are probably undercounted also. So definitely, I think that some of the jobs are being undercounted, and we have to take that into consideration as well. So that's just one of the things that I do know is going on. But definitely, folks are, in my mind, using a lot of that money for survival things, and there are still folks that are still trying to struggle and still trying to survive. And there are still folks that are behind in rent, behind in other bills as well. So I'm not of the opinion that we actually need to curtail all of those benefits. I know that there's even talk of a fourth stimulus package, and I'm actually in favor of that. But some people on this panel may not be. But that's just my thoughts.
Actually, believe it or not, there are a lot of people who are making money by playing chess and backgammon in Washington Square in New York. And I don't think that those people and their jobs are being reported in the latest jobs report.
Yeah, that's true. But also one of the other problems that we have, Mark, it's not just systemic racism, which everybody likes to talk about, at least in the media. It's systemic wealth disparity,
Yes.
which the media doesn't want to talk about because they sit on the other side of the wealth curve. So let me tell you what goes on. Okay, it's easier for me to say if I'm on media, talk about, oh, let's talk about the systemic racism. Let's talk about that all day long. But let's not talk about systemic what they call wealth disparity. I'm gonna give you an idea. One of our companies that we worked with in the past called PBS, the Public Broadcasting System. Go look at their form. Everyone has to produce a form called a 990 as a not-for-profit. All their top executives make more than $500,000 a year. Okay, and then some of them are making more than that, close to $1 million a year, and hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the last thing PBS is going to put on is let's uncover the millions of dollars that our executives are making at the PBS
Nick,
station.
but they work very hard.
Oh, I'm
Don't
sure
forget
they
that.
do. I'm sure they do. Go tell your Uber driver how hard Miss Kruger works at PBS for her $1 million paycheck, and watch the tears start flowing from the Uber drivers, going, "Oh no, look how hard they work there for their $1 million salaries." Tears will start flowing out. And so what we have here in this country that is not addressed wealth disparity. And do you know how bad it is, Mark? 50% of our wealth, 70% of all financial wealth is owned by 1% of the population. So if you have 100 people in the room, don't bother to talk to 99. Find the one that is worth more than all of them combined. And we've seen that. It exists right now. We see this in our station. We see this all over the place, and it's not being addressed by major media. So if you go on CBS today, they'll talk about Asian hate, because that's a popular thing. Let's go talk about Asian hate. Race disparity. Let's talk about that. Wealth disparity. Let's not talk about that because we're all pocketing, $10 to $50 million a year being on television. And gosh, that's part of our little hidden secret. So, and that's a real problem. And one problem my dear wife jumps in and brings out is say, look, the real reason these people are staying home on unemployment is they don't make enough in their regular jobs. Okay,
True
their
that.
jobs pay jack trash.
I mean,
Okay, and so, so
we haven't changed the
the
minimum
minimum
wage
wage.
in
I know that.
like
I know that.
10
Okay,
years.
okay. I'm so with you. Okay, in the area that I used to work in, estate planning. You know what they did? They had a cost of living increase, so you don't have to pay the estate tax. You know what it is today, Mark? $23 million. You're considered poor if you don't have 23 million in the circles I hung out with for 17 of my 37 years. Poor if you don't have 23 million. Seriously. Okay. And they have indexes to make sure you don't have to, so it keeps up with the cost of living and index. But most people don't even know that exists, the estate tax system, and the COLI increases so they don't have to pay more estate taxes. Now you go to the minimum wage. It was put at $7.25 an hour, no cost of living increase. And that's the difference between how the poor are treated in the United States and the wealthy. The area I work in today, which is actually income tax planning, the salary that you're supposed to receive to calculate benefits are $230,000. It's indexed for inflation, so it goes up. When I first started, it was like 200,000.
Nick, I have to
Yeah.
interrupt you just real quickly though, because one of the things that you're saying, I may partially agree with you in terms of how the media is covered and everything. But in terms of the civil rights leaders, I would actually argue that most of them do understand the relationship between race and class. There's a reason that William Barber is calling his campaign the Poor People's Campaign, because he definitely understands that there is a connection between race and class and
Oh yeah.
things along those lines. And even in academic research, because I know that I pulled up an article that was written almost a decade ago. But Rhonda Soto had actually said, and you'll enjoy her quote, she said, discussing race without including class analysis is like watching a bird fly without looking at the sky. It's possible, but it misses the larger context.
I absolutely agree, Mark. And the thing is, we have a disparity there that's just incredible. And they've done studies after studies to show how disparate it really is in the United States. And we have a huge class system that we can rival now India and China. India used to have a caste system, but we have our own. Britain has a class system. We have our own. And the thing is, and this is one reason every time I bring up the Gini coefficient, everybody goes, "Oh, I don't want to talk about that." And what's that? That is the ability for somebody to be economically mobile in the United States. It's like at an all-time low. You're born in a class, you will die in that class. And the mobility is extremely limited. And the studies demonstrate this over and over again, but we don't address this in any of the major media. I would challenge CBS tomorrow to address wealth disparity. Okay, I believe they'll start off with race disparity. They'll end with Asian hate. They'll mix in some economic news, but they will never address that particular issue, Mark, because that's an issue that actually hits the underbelly of the corporate America. And something they don't want to address. And we can address it here because we're not really controlled, except we did have one of our arms chopped off by IBM, but like an octopus, we're going to regrow it again. But the thing is, I get used to it. Corporate America has an incredible amount of power and wealth in the United States, and they use it all the time. And it's something that people just have to be aware of. Right now, we're very fortunate. We can broadcast on social media. We broadcast in 122 countries. We can continue doing it. And we don't have a gag order on us yet. Okay, but the thing is, I don't know, how long that's going to last before all of a sudden we're going to put a gag order and put these guys out. They're talking too much. Free speech is limited, as we well know. Don Trump found out about that the other day. Private companies have a little.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I remember even other Fareed Zakaria and other journalists talking about this economic disparity, and the irony is that when you see, Trump played to this base, right? Because people that are out of work, that that they can't make ends meet, are seeing someone in a tweed suit on CNN or any of the news stations who's making millions a year.
Sure.
It's easy for that person to say, "Well, stay at home and don't work," or "Stay at home," and these people are like, "Well, I got to go work. How am I gonna make a living?" So that wealth disparity is something I think we don't talk enough about. None of us are living hand to mouth right now. We all might have a tough day at work, but everybody on this show seems to have had some success in their careers. We can buy groceries, we can buy food, we have a roof over our head. But think about the people out there that don't know how they're going to make the rent payment this month. Do they have enough money to buy groceries? I know somebody that blew a tire, and I had to pay for the tire because they didn't have the money to pay for a spare tire. If I don't have enough money saved up to spend for a spare tire, man, I tell you, that to me was shocking, right? They've been out of work for 6 months, right? So anyway, I think, Nick, well played and good point. I think.
Matter of fact, there was a report, that gotta love, even though we sometimes downplay this organization, but just last year, the UN actually put out a World Social Report on inequality. So the World Social Report 2020, Inequality in a Rapidly Changing World, comes as we confront the harsh realities of a deeply unequal global landscape in North and South alike. Mass protests have flared up, fueled by a combination of economic woes, growing inequalities and job insecurity, income disparities, and a lack of opportunities are creating a vicious cycle of inequality, frustration, and discontent across generations. So that's just some of the things that they found out. The report also underscores how gender, along with ethnicity, race, place of residence, and socioeconomic status continue to shape the chances that people have in life. So they also said that in some parts of the world, divides based on identity are becoming more pronounced, Meanwhile, gaps in newer areas such as access to online and mobile technologies are emerging. So definitely that's something I know you're big on, Steve, and everything. But this is a report that came out just last year. So it came out in 2020. It's called the World Social Report 2020, and it's a full 216-page report that they have put out there that's basically saying a lot of the same things that we're saying as well. And, along those same lines, I just got it. I don't remember what it was for, a form. It was like one of those forms that you had to fill out in terms of, your background and all of that. And can't remember what it was for in terms of like, oh, I know what it was. It was the board profile for the Carolina Theater. I just remember what it was. It was the board profile for the Carolina Theater because I'm on that board. And you know that this time around, I noticed that they actually had two separate categories, because it used to be that you would have to put down either your race and or your ethnicity, but it was actually a category where they were asking the ethnicity separate from the race. So that's something else that people are doing. And I think they may even do that on the census now. So, you can be one thing that's your ethnicity and another thing that's your race. So they were actually separating that or parsing that out. And I think a lot of organizations are starting to do that now.
Yes, I mean, I think it's we're seeing a lot more consciousness about race, racial division. Speaking of race, we talked about the jobs plan. Hopefully, we'll have a better one. People getting back to work. President Biden has challenged our nation for 70% vaccination by July 4th. Looks like we've got some challenges in North Carolina. Only 1/3 of our state is vaccinated, so there are efforts this summer to get more people vaccinated. Do you all believe that we're going to reach that goal in the U.S. or have we peaked out? I mean, Nick, what is your thought on that?
Oh yeah, I think we're doing pretty well on the vaccine in this country. I think the real problem is that India has not done very well in getting people vaccinated. So they're the ones that are having the real problem.
Yeah, my closing monologue is going to be addressing that today. Sasha, what do you think about our goal in the U.S. of 70%?
Okay. Maybe if you count just Democrats, that goal will be definitely achievable. If you count Republicans, no, they're going to resist to vaccines, and unless again strong measures will be applied, such as, for example, the vaccinated people, they will have some evidence of being vaccinated. And those people who are not vaccinated, they should be banned from airport flights, even public transportation, stores, movie theaters, just any public place, for example. So I will stop at that. I will not recommend the corporal punishment or any other measures, but this will be good enough for people to reconsider their view on vaccination.
I'm beginning to think that Sasha has a guillotine somewhere tucked around in his house somewhere, because he keeps talking about that corporal punishment. So I think that he's got a
by the way,
guillotine tucked around over there somewhere.
I forgot which state. One of the U.S. states, either Virginia or South Carolina, I forgot which one. They run out of this injections, the little injections that the prisoners would have to be killed with. So, but because the prisoners, they have to have choice of two ways. So normally it would be electric chair and little injection. So now little injection is unavailable for some reason. So they brought back the firing squad. So now there is a choice between electric chair and firing squad. That's quite challenging, actually. I would be interested to see what people would prefer.
Does it really matter? It's just a matter of whether you're going to go out fairly immediately, because I'm thinking an electric chair would be a lot quicker than the painful death of several bullets ripping you apart and everything. But it depends on how good the aim is, because if the first bullet hits you in the heart, you're done.
Wait a sec. Remember the movie The Green Mile?
Right. Yeah. Yes.
Electric chair is not such a simple thing as you might think. It's a little bit more involved. It's a little bit more complicated. Therefore, I would prefer guillotine because it does a job instantly. And to tell the truth, probably is the less painful way to to say goodbye.
Yeah, and in South Carolina, I was on a news show this week on PBS Carolina. I do some political analysis from time to time on PBS, and somebody brought up the fact that in South Carolina, the legislature has got on the floor a bill that would allow for execution by gun, which I thought to be really wow. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that would just be hard to see. I don't know why we would want to encourage that. But anyway, I mean, but Sasha talked about he's talked about guillotine,
Well, you
corporal.
know,
Actually, the mass killing by gun was last performed by Stalin's troops
Yes,
against a Polish officer. 22,000 were instantly killed by guns into their heads. It was in 1939.
It just shows how far humanity has advanced since in this last century. Like we haven't. Okay, but now that we haven't, what I'd like to do is, of course, bring in one of the topics we just discussed. Oh, why is it removing it? It's supposed to add to StreamYard. Here we go. Add to the stream. There we go. Oh, here, take a look at this, Steve. You'll love this. Look at the U.S. wealth disparity. Okay, and U.S. income disparity. All right, you have the top 1% versus the bottom 40%. In income, the top 1% makes as much as the bottom 40%. But now in terms of what they have, the real assets, go look at the right column. Okay, this is how bad the disparity is. 1%, 34.7 trillion. The bottom 40% combined, look, 249 billion. They barely hit the mark. All right.
hey, Nick,
Now,
Nick, just a real quick question for you based on that, and
yeah,
I was wondering your thoughts on this. I was involved in it several years back when it was going
sure,
on, that being the Occupy movement, and definitely, you know, even the Panthers, who I have friends more on my
okay,
dad's generation that were involved in that. They talked about the economic disparity and things along those lines. But Occupy was totally about the economic disparity.
sure,
Some people would argue that Brexit was about the economic disparity. Why
right.
do you think that even though it is a known fact, and it's a very known fact, that there is a mass economic disparity, why have movements like that so far? I'm not saying that they will totally and ever forever fail, but why do you think that movements like that have totally failed? Because that whole thing was the 1% versus the
Well,
99% within
okay,
Occupy.
okay. The thing is, Mark, they haven't totally failed. What happens is there are certain countries that when they get this crazy, they end up in revolution. I think Cuba was one. I think
Right.
Russia was another one. Okay, and what does it really shakes the elites when all of a sudden the king is dead along with all their family. I mean, that's part of the reason for the Russian Revolution. They were looking at numbers like this, and eventually people get upset and bad things happen. In the United States, though, this is a serious problem that we don't want to address. But this disparity is unbelievable. I mean, just looking at from a pure economic standpoint, you have 1% that's eating all the bananas, and the bottom 40% have no bananas. Okay, and it's totally wrong. That's not what the United States is based on, at least. But during the Reagan Revolution, his idea was this: this is the America that you wanted to see, and he got what he wanted. Okay, this is the Reaganism at work, where 1% has all the bananas because he was upset because he was making $1 million a year that his income taxes were 90%. Oh, poor baby, you know. And see, here's my attitude. Okay, you're making $1 million a year. Yeah, your income taxes are 90%. You don't like it? Too bad. Get another person to take your position. There are plenty of people out there, and that's called mobility. When we had a 90% tax rate, which is during the Eisenhower administration. Okay, the United States worked at its best. We had a growing middle class. Now we don't have that anymore. And so we have what you're seeing on the screen. We're having a situation where 1% owns everything and everybody else goes eats banana peels. But the reason why this is wrong is all you have to do is read the Wall Street Journal. And I know that Sasha gets it. Okay, you want to see something wrong, read the Wall Street Journal on Friday. And Friday, you're going to see the Wall Street Journal has a mansion section where poor baby, they're selling and buying their $30 million and $50 million
Yep.
mansions. And poor baby even more. They're taking Palm Beach homes, buying it for $30 million, tearing it down to put a new home on for the poor baby. Okay. And see, the thing is this the America that you want? This is the America that you have right now, Mark. Okay,
Oh
now
no, there's no doubt that this is the
is
America we
this
got. And I was
the,
actually going to ask
is
Steve, when was the
this the
last time?
America that you want?
No,
And
this is
ahead.
not
why
the
is
one we want. And I was actually going to ask Steve a real quick question, which is, when was the last time? Because I know that Steve is definitely involved in a community that's right outside of our capital and everything, that being the Morrisville area. And I was just wondering, when was the last time that you heard of a true Horatio Alger story? Somebody that actually made it from the bottom of a corporation into a top executive seat? Because I cannot think of one off the top of my head. Because most of the
it
time,
doesn't exist. It doesn't exist,
No,
Mark. I
I
mean,
can't. Yeah, I
it's a
can't find
complete
it.
myth.
Yeah, well,
And the thing is, this whole idea that like Bill Gates came from poverty. His dad was a tax partner at Preston Gates and Ellis. The whole thing that Zuckerberg his dad was a dentist and gave him a choice. I'll fund your education at Harvard, or I'll give you a bunch of money to go start a McDonald's franchise. He equated those to be the same, and then he used his money from McDonald's franchise to fund Facebook. What about Google? Sergey Brin, both their parents were full-pledged professors at Michigan. All of them came from money, and they made more money. That was it. This whole idea of Horatio Alger's is garbage, and it doesn't. Like I said, basically, it doesn't exist. And so, what does exist is our tax policies that are behind this, and our economic policies. Let me give you another idea of an economic policy that's buried out there. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Act. Okay, remember I told you about these poor people in Palm Beach? I used to work there. Those were my clients, Mark. I spent 17 years. My clients were the founder of Dunkin' Donuts, Bill Rosenberg, the president of Philip Morris, the president of Bausch, the president of Kimberly Clark. Okay, and by the way, these are the nicest people in the world. Don't get me wrong, nicest people in the world, happy people, of course. You know, they did a study. If you're making $500,000 a year, you're usually pretty happy. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with them as a person. But I'm just saying, the thing is, if you look at the economic power that they have relative to the average person, it isn't even close. And our policies are not to tax them, or as FEMA does, support their insurance program for flood insurance and hurricane insurance. Like they need support for that.
well, first of all, Mark, I want to. We have a few more minutes left, and we're going to wrap up here. But I have not heard any stories of people that have made it from the bottom up to the corporation. The last person that I heard about that actually was my own grandfather, who literally in India worked for a company named Voltas, and he went from the very bottom of the company with no education all the way to the top to become the general manager and CEO. It was a rags to riches story. He was a major in World War II, still a family icon. It's almost as if I can't believe, I knew him until I was about 9 years old, and he passed away, or 8 years old. But you don't hear those stories too often in the U.S. anymore, because it's that privilege. But I'll end with this point. And Nick, I think the slides really got me thinking here. We've seen just such a growing disparity in wealth. And, there's this notion that government, President Reagan, may he rest in peace, when he was inaugurated president, he said, government is not the problem. Government is the problem, right? But big government, if done well, has actually worked in America. Yeah. If you look at Roosevelt and the New Deal, in that era, we were looking at 3% of our GDP invested on science, innovation. We modernized or created 1,000 airports. We had the Rural Electrification Act that provide electricity for rural areas. And I'm seeing a lot of synergies here between President Biden's infrastructure plan, right? Yeah. Broadband, electric vehicles. Now, high taxes can perhaps affect cash flow and profit, so people hire less. But stealing back and just saying, I'm going to lower the tax rate and the money's going to trickle down, doesn't necessarily create jobs. That would be an interesting analysis. If you look at the different presidential administrations, which president created more jobs? Was it Reagan, Bush 2, Bush 1, Clinton, Obama? I want to see a dashboard, because I want to call this out. Does that low trickle down work?
No, it doesn't.
I don't think trickle down has never worked. Trickle down does not work at all. But one of the things that does work, and it's an interesting concept that happens within society, and I've actually got a good friend of mine that does a Facebook Live, and sometimes I'll have it on my page and everything, and it sometimes spills over into ours as well. But Danita Watson runs something called the National Black Mastermind Group, and she oftentimes talks about the fact that within the African American society. And while it is a class issue, and I agree with you on that, Nick, but within the African American society, one of the things that we don't do is we don't do enough of spending money in our own community. So the feeling is that a lot of times, like within the Indian community, that money circulates within the Indian community several times around before it ever goes out. It goes from our hands back into the mass crowd and does not circulate enough within the African American community. So that's
Right.
something that she talks about a lot, and that's something that we have to improve because that is part of the problem within the African American economics.
Hmm. Yeah.
I think so far your theory really works very well for white wealthy people. I think their money are circulated among themselves before leaving it. And they are doing
That's
very well.
absolutely true. Right. So it's just different. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with these people. They're, like I said, they're the nicest people in the world to work with. They pay their bills. I mean, I can't say anything bad about them, but
But, Nick, I
the
would like
system
to
is
correct
really
you.
skewed toward their benefit. Even Elon Musk, who was on Saturday Night Live,
That's
he
right.
gets a lot of government jobs for SpaceX. He gets government
I
assistance.
missed.
This
Yeah,
whole thing
fell asleep.
with putting these electric things on is going to
Oh, yeah.
benefit his company Tesla. You're benefiting this guy right, left, and center, and then you're saying, well, let's not tax the guy. Come on.
Nick, but I'd like to disagree with you on one statement you made that anybody who will make $500,000 a year is very happy until his neighbor is making $750,000 a year. He's not
Yeah.
going to be
Oh,
happy.
okay. I know.
That's a problem.
I understand that. But I'm just saying this was a study that was put out on happiness,
Yeah,
and
no, I agree.
they showed that as your income increases, you become happy. And then when they did a survey of people making more than 500,000 a year, they found nobody that was unhappy. It was like they're all happy. And so the thing is, what I'm saying is that what we have as your income is way down there, you're very unhappy, and it's just a happiness meter. But the real problem that we're seeing, Sasha, is like in the 60s, we actually had a 90% tax rate on people making more than $1 million a year. Okay. And making $1 million, you have a lot of economic power. We had an estate tax that if you had more than 1.2 million, 600,000 each, you would pay it into the system. Today, those systems are gone. But here's what's been replaced. Anybody who's listening to this, who's working for a living, starts paying 15.3% in payroll taxes, whether they know it or not. It's chopped up to employer-employee, so you only see 6.2, but you don't see the other 6.2 on the Social Security, 1.45 on Medicare, you don't see it. But in reality, you're paying 15.3% $1 on your earned income. Earned income is the worst form of income, which is working for a living. And so our system is completely upside down. We don't support the workers, and the workers get punished because who writes these bills? Is it workers or is it wealthy peoples and their lobbyists? Who writes the tax law? By the way, don't all answer at once. It's not the guy driving Uber. I can tell you that
definitely
right
not him.
now. Hey! Yeah, I was going to say, Mark, it's not the guy who's driving Uber who just wrote the tax bill. Guess what? It's
Well,
somebody
folks,
upstairs.
we have a minute left, so I'm
Oh,
gonna.
I have to go.
No. Well, anyway, I know you got to go, but want to thank everyone for being with us today. We might give someone maybe a chance to chime in, real quick, 10 seconds. But let me close out today. First of all, I want to wish every Muslim in the world a happy, blessed Ramadan, a time for peace, prayer, and reflection. Try fasting from sun up to sundown. It's really, really tough. And we'll be having some festivities here at some of the mosques here in Morrisville. But want to wish everyone a happy, blessed Ramadan. And on that note, as we pray for India, as President Biden challenged the nation that America has always found a way to find hope over fear and light over darkness. Today, we pray for India to have light, the light of love and hope that we can give to a nation, the world's largest democracy, that we as Americans and leaders around the world can step up and provide resources and funding to help this great democracy, this vibrant democracy, survive this tragedy, this humanitarian catastrophe. And we should reach out to our tech leaders around the country and around the world. So long live India, long live the United States of America. And we pray for anyone out there suffering, for anyone who has any family who has lost a loved one. The light and love of our hearts will always lift us out of the darkness, because darkness and light cannot coexist. But that light sometimes isn't the light of a lamp or a fire, it's the light that burns brightly within each of us. Please let it shine upon the world. And on that note, if you are alone, if you feel alone, you are not alone. We at Pod TV here support you in your time of grief. On that note, I'm going to end the show today. I want to thank Mark Lee for being with us, Sasha, Nick Paladiva. We'll be back tomorrow for our new branded show, Pod TV, where we bring you great news from all around the world. And on this show, World Edition, I'm honored. I'm Steve Rao, your host, to host this show. And I'll be back next week for tomorrow for another edition. Might need some help this week with some work stuff that's come up. But thank you so much, everybody. Be safe.